皆さんおはようございます。演劇というものはですね、その国の言葉、文化、そして歴史などが全部絡まって初めて一つの劇ができるんじゃないかと私は思いますけれども、しかしここロサンゼルスではなんと20年ぐらい前から日本人と日系人の合同とした劇団ができています。でそこでその責任者の方、劇団長と申しましょうか、柏木宗二さんを今日スタジオの方へお迎えいたしております。そのお話を伺いたいと思います。今日は英語でさせていただきます。Nice to meet you, Kashiwagiさん。
Nice to meet you, Thank you very much for having me.
As I was talking to our audience at the beginning, the play, stage play, usually is reflect that player's nationality or language or culture. And I believe Japanese and Japanese American has a different culture. How do you manage to put these two group of people into one group? This must be hard.
Oh, you mean Japanese Americans and Japanese from Japan?
Yes, all together. Because I went to see your show last year.
Right.
I was deeply moved.
Yes. It actually goes back to when we started our group. We actually started with my wife, Keiko, and our musical director, Scott. And Scott wanted to do some programs for the Keito Senior Retirement Home to sing some nostalgic Japanese songs for them. And at the time, we had just started a relationship with a group of Japanese actors from Japan who were studying acting in Hollywood. And we had just started a friendship relationship, and we invited them. We figured that they would know how to speak and sing in Japanese, and they would probably know some of these children's songs. And so we invited them to join us. This was 15 years ago, in 2001. And we invited them to join us, and we started just singing children's songs for the seniors.
But for Japanese American, your side of people,
right.
Where did you learn those children's songs, Japanese children's songs?
Okay, so the Issei, our first generation, they came over to America, and when they started having kids, they would sing these children's songs to their Nisei children. And the Nisei children, when they grew up and had kids, they sang it to us, the Sansei. So the same songs got passed down through generations.
It is not easy for whole family, 3 generations, still singing Japanese children's songs, isn't it? Some family already forget about it or not even know anything about Japan.
It's true, especially after what happened during World War II.
Yes.
A lot of the emphasis of being Japanese and our Japanese culture kind of went away because of people wanting to survive in America. They felt like they couldn't be Japanese anymore. But part of the reason we feel it's important to sing these songs is to keep our culture going, keep our culture alive. And so when we do sing these songs, it's very nostalgic for the seniors and for us as well, because it reminds us of our childhood.
Really? So when you were in America, you were born in America, and you sing those Japanese childhood song or children's song, what kind of feeling do you have?
Well, a lot of us, Sansei, we're 3rd generation, and Yonsei, we know these songs. We don't necessarily know the words to the song, the lyrics.
Or the meaning.
Or the meaning, but when we hear it, we know the song, or we know that we've heard this before, and it takes us right back to childhood. To
when you were playing with your grandparents, or the grandparents played with you?
It could be either grandparents when we were very young, or even our parents. So it's very nostalgic, and for many, it's pretty emotional just to hear those songs again.
What do you think of Japanese community in Los Angeles? I realize there's always a gap between Japanese and Japanese American, and I'm surprised that you and your family can understand the Japanese culture, especially children's song, and you try to learn from it.
Right.
Because I know a lot of Japanese Americans basically maybe just don't have any relation or any tie with Japan.
That's a difficult one. The relationship between Japanese Americans and Japanese from Japan has always been kind of separate.
Right, right.
There's your Japanese American community that's been here since the early 1900s, and then there's the Japanese, what we call the Shin Issei community.
Yes.
They came much later, maybe in the mid 60s or 70s, that period of time. And so there's always been, I think, language is a thing that's kind of
Barrier.
separated. Yes, where the people from Japan are more comfortable speaking in Japanese, we're more comfortable speaking in English, and the two have never really gotten together as far as...
Although ancestors are the same.
Yes, ancestors are the same.
The cultures,
yes.
well, basically, should be the same.
Yes, and one of the things that we hope to do is to bring us together through our common music and songs that we share. Different time periods, but we share the same nostalgic Japanese songs that mean something to us. It may be different place, like those in Japan heard it there, but we heard it here. So for example, Misora Hibari, you know.
I'm surprised you know that.
Yeah, a lot of people are surprised that we Nikkei
Yes.
even heard of Misora
Yes.
Hibari. But, you know, as many Japanese from Japan, you know, she's famous, world famous, right? And she really helped people in Japan after the war, helped them to recover, just give them strength and encouragement after a very difficult time. And she had the same effect on Japanese Americans here in America, where, you know, right after the war, she was really young, and she would sing these songs, and it would really lift people's spirits. And then they would go to see her movies. She had a number of movies, and they had theaters in Little Tokyo and other places in Los Angeles where people would go and watch her movies.
Really? So she was not just very popular and famous in Japan. At those days and those years,
Right.
she was also famous and popular in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles,
America.
in America, especially Hawaii. She's got a lot of big fans in Hawaii and on the mainland in here in America. Many people have very fond memories of her.
So during those years born, maybe you're the one, and then the oji-chan, oba-chan start to talk about her or sing her song.
Yes,
then
or just growing up, you know, watching her on TV. She'd be on like Kohaku, the program, and we'd see her there.
So what do you think about your children, you know, the fourth generation, fifth generation? Would they be continuously carrying that Japanese heritage?
I think it's up to us,
Family, huh?
to the family, to really pass that on to them so they could see and appreciate our culture. Because a lot of times our culture's been, you know, like I said, cut off from, you know, we become more Americanized instead of really focusing on our Japanese culture and roots. So it's really going to be up to us to pass it on, and up to them to be interested enough to pursue it, you know, do their own research and take their own trips to Japan and become more interested in it.
It's always a family education, family first. Kashiwagi-san, thank you so much. Let's take a short break and we continue to talk.
Okay.
Thank you. Kashiwagi-san, when we talk about Japanese Americans' experience in this country, it's a painful past history.
Yes.
Or you were not born yet during those years.
Right.
What did your parents or your grandparents talk about those anxious years?
They did. They definitely went through a very difficult...
They were in camp too.
Yes.
I see.
But it started even before the war, you know, because the Issei, they came here in the early 1900s, a lot of them, and then they sent to what they call for picture brides, where the wife joined them in the United States from Japan. And so they started having kids in the 1910s and 1920s. And during that time, they faced a really severe discrimination and a lot of racism. And specific laws were written against them. They weren't allowed to become citizens. They weren't allowed to own land. So laws were written, you know, specifically targeting them. And despite this, they formed their own Nihonmachi Japantowns up and down California. There was over 40 of them. And they were able to establish their own community culture and businesses. You know, we did a show called Nihonmachi, The Place to Be, which was about a manju, 100 years of a manju.
Yes, I noticed.
Yes, and so it really kind of paints this picture of their lives here, and it was one of a lot of struggle, but they also did very well. They also were in the fishing and farming, and they had their own small businesses. And even despite the Depression era, they were doing, up until World War II, they were doing fairly well in their own, sort of separate community.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the Nisei were born then, in that period. And then, of course, World War II happens, and then they lost everything, and they were put in what we call these American-style concentration camps that happened right in 1942. And so they lost their homes, their businesses, and their freedom and their rights as Americans. And the Nisei were, are American.
Yes.
And so this was completely against our Constitution, but it was done. And everybody, Issei and Nisei, got put into these camps for 3.5 years. 3.5 years.
That's quite a long years.
Yes. And a lot of these Nisei were, young teenagers, and they lost, their future. They felt like their future was lost.
Well, some people even lost their lives, went to Europe, joined the 442nd.
There's the famous
to
442nd.
prove that they're so loyal to this country.
Yes.
It's very sad
Yes,
history.
many did lose their lives, and they were heroic. And
However, the Japanese Americans still continuously to be a very respectful citizen in this country. And one way that the Japanese people from Japan are saying that today all these Japanese corporations can sell their products here, they can come here, is because of the older Japanese immigrants, Furui, old Issei,
Yes.
come here and suffered, endured, and gaman,
Yes.
and build up this platform. That's why the current Japanese come from Japan can come here without any problem, easily can stay here. It's all, we cannot forget about the Japanese Americans, older Japanese Americans' effort to build this railroad for us to come here. That's a lot of Japanese people are saying that.
It's very true. It's very true, because the Issei and Nisei paved the way.
Yes.
Not only for me and for future generations, but all those people that came over from Japan and lived here. Because before, it was not hip or cool to be Japanese. Japanese were seen as the enemy.
Right.
And very much hated in this country. And they weren't hiring Japanese Americans after the war. And so they had to become gardeners, and they had to become maids. And it was a real struggle for over 10 years after the war to kind of get back on their feet. And it was really tough. And so, for those that came afterwards.
Right. Kashiwagi-san, you'll be surprised. A lot of Japanese, especially the younger generations, they have no idea about this history. And I think this is very important. So your group, your what do you call that, gekidan, can have the Japanese people join together and understand each other. And I think this is a very good promotion for your gekidan too, huh?
Yeah, like for, like I said, Grateful Crane started 15 years ago. So this has been a kind of a relationship that's been built over these last 15 years. So in that time, we've become friends first, and then we just kind of, got to know each other and got to understand each other and where we're coming from. And then we were able to figure out what each other does best and what strengths that they could bring. So for these actors and friends that we have from Japan, they speak and sing in Japanese. So we naturally use that and in our shows, to sing Japanese songs. And because they speak Japanese, we have them play Issei characters who spoke mainly Japanese. And so we utilize everybody's strengths.
Did you have any difficulty to communicate with the Japanese coming from Japan?
Difficulty?
Yes.
No, not too bad. I mean, it's just a matter of we just worked together and we formed this understanding of each other.
The language, when they speak in Japanese, they say, well, this part got to be this way in Japanese. Do you have a hard time trying to understand, or do they have a hard time trying to understand?
Yeah,
American
there's been
side?
some of that on both sides.
So what happened when it happened?
We just, sometimes that, the actors from Japan will tell us, their point of
English,
view.
yes.
And they'll explain things, how a Japanese person may think of this, and then, we'll explain where it comes from and from a Japanese American perspective. And so there's been kind of an exchange of cultural ideas, and yeah.
Do you find any difficulty? Well, I shouldn't say difficulty. The difference, like a Japanese American and Japanese in Korean community or Chinese community or Vietnamese community, do you find similar problem among their communities?
I think one of the things that they share is that
same language.
They share the same language. So most Koreans that are born here, they grow up speaking Korean in the house, and so
Really?
they could communicate with their parents and their grandparents. So that's what makes us more of a unique
Difficult,
situation,
yes.
because we were not encouraged
That's because of the war.
because of the war, right? We were encouraged not to
How
be.
sad.
It is very sad, because we lost. When you lose your language, you lose a deep part of who you are as a person, your culture, your connection to Japan. Yeah, so that's a very strong thing. We couldn't even speak to our grandparents, because we didn't speak their language. And most Issei, they prefer to speak and did speak in Japanese. Yeah, so.
When you think about this, it's not that $20,000 can solve the problem.
Oh, you mean the redress that they
Yes.
received after the war? That was very much a token amount when you consider how much was lost. That's just the monetary, and property loss. But when you consider the emotional loss and, the loss of language,
Generations, connections,
yes,
loss.
yeah, 20,000 is really not a lot at all, actually.
Well, American government really has to deep think about this twice, again, all the time, anytime.
Yes, yes.
Because everybody is American citizen. Why segregate like this?
Yes.
Why discriminate like this? And you're creating a lot of, it's generation after generation's pain.
Yes, true. It's happening again now to Muslim Americans.
Yes.
And so Japanese Americans and Japanese
Try
community
to-
in general should be aware of what's happening, and we need to, be able to stand with
Right.
people like the
Help.
Muslim
Yes,
Americans and
yes.
help them to make
Right.
sure that this does not happen
Right.
again, because it already happened to us.
Yes.
Yes.
Kashiwagi-san, thank you so much. And I would like to listen some more about your Gekidan next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.